a Playlyst original.
Welcome to the Pilot Podcast,
where we review the pilot episodes of TV shows to answer your question, should I watch this?
My name is BJ.
And my name is Mitu.
And this week, we're watching The Last Airbender on Netflix, The Vince Staples Show on Netflix, Messi's World Cup, The Rise of a Legend on Apple TV+, and Tracker on CBS.
So stay tuned to the end to find out what BJ would be really good at finding.
Oh. Okay, I'll think about it.
Okay, until then, why don't you let us know what happened in Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix?
Sure. This is a live-action adaptation of the animated series of the same name, and it's set in a war-torn world where certain people can bend one of the four classic elements: water, earth, fire, or air. Aang, the Avatar, and the last living airbender is played by Gordon Cormier. Aang is now faced with the responsibility of ending the ambitions of the Fire Nation to conquer the world. And with his new companions, Katara and Sokka, played by Kia Wintio and Ian Owsley, Aang sets out to master the four elements. So Mitu, what did you think of this live-action adaptation?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great introduction into the series. I know that Hive feels strongly about Avatar: The Last Airbender, especially the animated series. I live with a member of the Hive. I was talking to another very close friend of mine last night about it, who's a member of the Hive, had many a discussion circle. I thought it was a great introduction to the story for people like me who were unfamiliar, despite loving many members of Hive.
Wow, you missed the whole Nickelodeon animated run.
Yes, the whole thing.
Okay, well, I agree. This is a great way to now catch up on that story. And I think they're doing a very faithful adaptation.
Yes, even there's a part where they talk about the lore of what happened, and when we needed this hero the most, he disappeared. There's a part where they are able to cleverly get that into the dialogue of the show. And I watched my partner light up and say the words alongside the character. So I know that reviews are mixed, but at least in my home, this show was a hit.
And now this is a Nickelodeon property. This version is on Netflix, but it's still based on a children's show. And I think we were both shocked at how violent the Fire Nation is portrayed in this version.
Yes. Because on one hand, I think some of the reviews are harsh on this show because ultimately there is what feels like a lack of recognition of the fact that this is a Nickelodeon show. This is for kids. This is a kids show. This is not going to be an older show, a more mature show. Our lead is an adorable little baby Aang who's about to save the world.
A 12-year-old.
At the same time, though, I did ask myself a few times out loud, is this for kids? We watched someone get burned alive from the inside of their body out. Like actually just charred.
And I appreciate that they're not shying away from the fact that this is a war story. War has ravaged the world. It's affected all of the main characters. And they're not glossing over that as like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. People are dying.
And these main characters are acting. When Aang learns that he's the last airbender, there's a very, very emotional moment where it really dawns on him that broke my heart. Seeing Katara and Sokka basically have to be leaders of their village because of how much death and destruction has happened was really heartbreaking. Even seeing Prince Zuko, played by Dallas Liu, be so motivated to get the Avatar because he has been exiled from the Fire Nation was really heart-wrenching. You don't want to root for the villain, but I felt very badly for him.
Everyone has tragic backstories. And on a lighter note, all of the bending looks really cool. The special effects, very high budget TV movie, but high budget.
It was very good. Very good action scenes.
And I thought the pacing was well done. This will be a shorter run than the animated series, but the episodes are longer, and I think they have found a really good balance of getting through the story so far.
That's true. I'm not going to lie. When I clicked on it and I saw that it was over an hour, I thought some things about you. I was upset with you personally. I was like, BJ put this show on here. I felt personally attacked by you.
That's strong feelings.
But that hour went by quickly. I never checked how much time I had left. I was in it.
So you forgive me?
Yes.
Question mark.
All right, Beach. Well, will you watch more episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix?
I think I will. I will watch again casually. I've never rewatched the animated series. I only saw it when it was airing on TV. And I think enough time has passed that I want to see this story again. How do you feel?
I would watch again casually too, which surprises me. I did not think this would be for me. I thought I would just recognize it as good and leave it to Hive. But I really enjoyed it. And if you're not Airbender Hive, but you are animated show Hive / YA Hive, I think you'll really like this.
Perfect. So how about we go from the more YA children's genre to more adult and comedy?
You're talking about the Vince Staples Show, also on Netflix. Kind of famous and sort of rich rapper-actor Vince Staples navigates the challenges of everyday life in his hometown of The Beach.
So Mitu, you were telling me that you have seen Vince in interviews and that his personality kind of lends himself well to leading a show?
Yes, I'm really not surprised he got his own show. I saw that he was a co-creator on this. He is so charming, and frankly, more than his music, I'm aware of his interviews. He's had a ton of viral moments of interviews he does about his philosophies on life and music and personal relationships and things. And he's funny. And I thought that it was very smart of Netflix to ride that wave and to capitalize on how charming and funny Vince Staples is. And I think with this show, people would be surprised at how surreal it is. And I thought that that was really a bold choice, but a smart choice to make it kind of different from what we'd expect.
It is different. And
that different out of your voice in that tone goes many miles, but keep going. It's carrying a lot.
It's interesting to hear how charming he can be in interviews compared to how chill he is throughout this pilot episode.
Yes, I needed more from him, ultimately. I thought the show was funny. I thought this first episode was funny. I think that there were moments that were played for humor that were not that funny to me, but I still laughed. It got laughs out of me, especially thanks to a really, really strong guest actor roster, especially Rob, played by Christopher Meyer, one of his cellmates trying to get a record deal. He made me laugh a ton. Ultimately, from Vince himself, I just needed more. I understand that in this show, he's kind of the straight man reacting to the ridiculousness around him, but he was almost too laid back and too internal with regard to what was going on around him. I think my biggest laugh, though, was when he called his sister after he gets arrested to bail him out. And she goes, "I don't do jailhouses, I sell houses." And she was putting up real estate signs around the neighborhood.
And I think that lends to your point. All of the people around him that Vince was interacting with are more engaging and entertaining and funny than his character is presented as in this episode. And it's odd because the show has a very dark undertone. He's very chill. The people he's interacting with are very funny, but they're also addressing some pretty serious issues, especially with how law enforcement and jails affect the Black community.
Yes, he goes through hell in this first episode. And perhaps maybe that is its own commentary, that he is maybe accustomed or has seen this so much that it does not get a rise out of him. But then I think that there is a way to portray that without being so subtle.
That's a good term. Maybe he is playing this very subtly, and I just missed some of those reactions.
Well, with that, do you want to keep watching the surprisingly understated but very zany Vince Staples show on Netflix?
Your description of him in interviews makes me want to give it another chance. So I would put it at would watch while folding laundry. Based on this pilot alone, without your commentary, I don't think it was strong enough to keep me interested.
I agree. Not about my own commentary. I agree with myself. No, it's that he is so funny, and this is a limited series, so I think I'll see it through anyway because I'm just curious. But if you are not Vince Staples' interview clip hive, and if you're looking for a sitcom that's similarly surreal, I'd recommend like the first season of Atlanta before I recommend the Vince Staples show.
Makes sense.
All right, Beach. Well, let's take things from the beach to the World Cup.
What a long journey.
Not too long in a few years.
That's true. It's coming up. You're talking about Messi's World Cup, The Rise of a Legend on Apple TV Plus, where we are following the legend Lionel Messi's epic journey through 5 World Cups, culminating in the 2022 triumph. As we watch the championship unfold, Messi shares some of his personal reflections on his national team career and the challenges he faced. So me too, as the resident soccer or football fan on this podcast, what did you think?
I love that when one of us is maybe a little bit more familiar with something, we have to then become an expert because there's 2 of us. So in having simply seen World Cup games, I am now resident armchair football expert.
Professor, yeah.
Professor of Lionel Messi, kickball good. With this show, I will start with what I really loved about it, which is the focus on the teammates, the focus on the stakes. I did not know that Lionel Messi, excuse me for exposing my expertise, the shortcoming of it so soon.
Already, wow.
But I didn't know he didn't have a World Cup under his belt. I recognize him as one of the best players in the world, and arguably people say one of the best of all time, if not the best of all time. So in my mind, he has like a gang of World Cup wins. But when you think about it, they happen so few times. There's so many elements that go into it. It's not like LeBron James just racking up championship after championship every single year. So not that that happens either, but I just was surprised to learn that he did not have a World Cup under his belt. And so the stakes of this being his last World Cup, this, so we believe for now, and this being his big chance to bring it home from Argentina, his team really, really wanting to do it for him, and then all of them really wanting to do it for their country was very compelling. And I do not root for Argentina in the World Cup, but I was very compelled.
You watched, but you were watching for a different side.
My approach to the World Cup is I root for all the African teams that make it. And then
There you go.
Once those no longer are in the games, then I root for Brazil. Once Brazil is no longer in the games, then I just pick the team with the most African players.
Okay, you got a formula.
Math, science.
Something like that. I agree on the really good stakes. I enjoyed that this was a team documentary. We heard from multiple players on the Argentina team. We heard from the coach. And I think that really gave more insight into what was driving Messi as well, because he's leading all these people. They're looking to him to get this win, to help pull the team through And you also see the amount of pressure. They talk about this a bit in this pilot episode, that when Argentina performs poorly, it's Messi's fault.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what happened.
Effigies of the man in the street.
And I'm sure if they won and he never scored, it's because of him. Mm-hmm. And that is a big weight to have on your shoulders.
Yes, huge. And we get that from the clips that we see from the players, but we don't get that from Messi himself. And Beach, could you remind me the name of this show?
Messi's World Cup.
Okay, so why don't we get a little messy with Messi? My main critique of this show is that I don't know any more about him. And I was so curious to tune in because I know him as this great athlete. I truly don't know much else about him, what makes him tick, what motivates him, anything. And it felt like a post-game presser, his conversations with the camera. They highlight in this first episode the game against Saudi Arabia, which Argentina very famously lost. And it was a huge deal because it's a major, major upset in the World Cup. Sorry, spoilers.
We were all upset, yeah.
We were all upset. BJ sports guy. So when he talks about it, you would think there would be some kind of rise out of him. And instead, he was just like, we wanted to play 100%. They played 110%. Like, it was just classic post-game sports presser. And I don't think I learned any more about him. Same with the look into his childhood. I love that part of sports documentaries where you see that they were able to kick good from childhood into adulthood. And we see this 13-year-old version of him going to Barcelona to be in his own, to train for professional sports. And I don't think that any of the footage we saw was probably new footage. I just think we got a really great recap of his existence.
Well, there you go. He is very consistent with his portrayal. He is the same really good player that you knew him as before. And these highlights and clips reinforce that.
That's it. He doesn't even at any point just kind of get emotional. There's a part of the documentary where they talk about when he was 18 and he goes to his first World Cup and he scores. And the significance of that, which is explained by other people, like journalists, is the fact that he chose to play for Argentina rather than Spain, despite having trained in Spain for many years. So having that loyalty to country. I bet that was such a controversial choice. I bet he got a lot of flack for it. I bet it was a difficult thing to be that brave at 18 and do that. And, all these sentences start with "I bet," because I don't know. I don't know from the man himself.
Well, we do learn that he might not be the most emotive. Mm-hmm. Some of his teammates commented, particularly during that Saudi Arabia game, they saw him like frown or like squint his eyes or something. And they were like, oh, he was so upset after they scored.
When he cocked his head to the right, that was practically screaming. That's how he yells at us.
So, maybe he communicates his emotions in subtle ways like Vince Staples. And you missed it.
Frankly, the best part of this pilot episode for me was the recap of the game. It was electrifying. But because there was so much more emotion on the Saudi Arabian side, I found myself rooting for Saudi Arabia.
Even this time?
Yes, I found myself rooting for them. There's a part where one of the players scores, I think, the second or third goal for Saudi Arabia. And he is so happy that he cannot control the joy in his body. And he does this cartwheel into a roundoff. I was smiling from ear to ear. And then I separately was so curious about their coach, Hervé Renard, who coaches teams that are just non-traditional entries into the World Cup, and how he could motivate them through a translator, because none of them share a language. So he speaks English, which is not his language, to a translator who then translates not his language to those players.
Yeah, he speaks coach.
He speaks coach. And I was like, man, can we just get a documentary on him? Like, I found my mind being more interested there than with Messi.
That's a problem. So what would you rate this show?
I would still watch more, but because I like sports, specifically, I like the World Cup. And this was just such a cool way to recap and shoot the games. And my impression from this pilot episode is that every Friday when these episodes come out, we're just going to watch another game that they play and just get tiny little background on him, great insights from the players, which is the most interesting part, and then electrifying recap. And if so, and if you are World Cup Hive, you'll enjoy this. So I'll just watch it, every weekend going forward.
Wow. A glowing review that says downplay the Messi element. Focus on the World Cup.
And maybe in the next episode, he'll be like, and that's when my drinking problem started. Or something.
Or he'll just smile and you'll be like, there it is.
Did I get a little emotion from you? And then I'll just be satisfied.
Well, you'll have to tell me about it. I don't see myself watching more, mostly because I don't care enough about the World Cup.
Yeah.
But to be fair, listeners, I love a good DC United game.
That's true.
So, soccer.
You are out here supporting it IRL.
And that's what matters. I won't be at that game, the Inter Miami game where Messi comes here, because that game's going to be crazy expensive.
Yes.
But I'll support the other games, the teams that don't get the recognition that they deserve.
Support local soccer. Well, it's not really that local. It's actually really fantastic team.
This new upstart initiative.
New young upstarts. The very successful DC United.
I'll give them a go. Okay, me too. Let's head from sports to a rewardist.
You're talking about Tracker on CBS. Rewardist and Survivor List. Coulter, played by Justin Hartley, is a reward seeker using his tracking skills to help people and law enforcement find what they've lost while contending with his own fractured family.
So, me too. What was more interesting to you? His own fractured family or the families he's helping save?
Honestly, I don't think one was more interesting than the other. I just think this was a really solid CBS procedural and entry into the CBS procedural world, where I thought they balanced the mystery of his father, his disappearing brother. Was his daddy unhinged, or was his father actually being pursued by some unnamed entity? That mystery that obviously is going to take us through the season was really interesting, but balanced well with this case of the week of the missing boy.
I agree. I liked both plot lines equally. I think they mixed them together well, with some flashbacks to his childhood and him talking a little bit about the mystery, as well as him trying to find this missing child who his mother thinks was taken by his father.
And they do that classic thing where when he's good at something, a couple times we learned why, and it's because of his history.
Yes, he was trained for this.
And I like that. I like that he's a hero. I like that he's well-trained. And I like that it's for money. I thought that added a good edge to the show, where in the beginning you have that classic CBS procedural beat where he solves a crime right at the top, so you know what he does and how well he does it. And he's like talking to the person connected with the person that he found, and he's, making sure that she's okay. And then he goes, all right, so cash, Venmo, Zelle, how do you want to sort of do this? I have a Square in my car. Like, how do you want me to process this payment? And I love that he does good stuff. He saves people, but he has to have gas money for that truck.
That big GMC truck. Yes, he is a hero for money. And it's interesting because the characters in the universe of this show question whether he is genuinely a hero and genuinely cares. But me as the viewer, I never doubted that he cared about these people. I feel like he really did want to find this little boy and at the same time wants to get a paycheck.
Yeah, he wouldn't have done as good a job if he didn't have the resources to do it.
It's expensive. His tech guy was charging him a lot to hack into text messages.
That's true. Quite a bit of money for something that the mom should have just had access to from like a Verizon bill. He basically was like, hack into these texts. And then the text messages of that missing boy were like, I will be at this restaurant at this time. It's like, did no one do that? Did no one just go check the text history?
Well, a running theme in this episode is that he maybe is more talented or more on top of things than law enforcement.
That's true. He evades them, he outsmarts them, and at one point, he beds them.
All of that happens. He also directs them. It says,
true.
You need to be doing X, Y, Z.
I also like that in this show, there's the classic crew. So he's branded as a loner, but we have the tech guy, Bob, played by Eric Grace, and we have his taskmasters, this married couple, Velma and Teddy, played by Abby McEnany and Robin Weigert. And I like that they're the kooky people around him that love him and still send him on assignments and make sure he's doing his job well. And then we have his lawyer / maybe crush, Renee, played by Fiona Renee, which I really liked too. I liked that element.
He's got a great crew. They've set it up well because Coulter is always on the move to whatever the next tracking situation, wherever it takes him, and he can just call all of the people he needs. He doesn't need to actually, meet up with them in the home base to get things done.
This is a pro remote work show, and for that,
Fully.
I must support.
No return to office messages anytime soon.
He can still do his job from that truck, and everybody can help him from their homes because technology is that connecting tissue.
5G, so powerful.
So with that, do you want to watch the power of 5G continue to thrive in Tracker on CBS?
I think I would watch while cooking. It is a solid CBS procedural. Nothing stands out as that exciting, but it's also entertaining. It's this weird mix of, yes, that is good, not great.
A glowing review? I do think
it's favorable.
I think I feel similarly. It's a solid, really solid entry into the CBS procedural world. So I also would watch while cooking, and I would recommend it to Procedural Hive.
Yeah, it's good.
It's not like, the ones we always mention, like a Monk or Psych, where I'll sit down, or even a new one that I love from CBS, So Help Me Todd, where I sit and I watch it just straightforward. This one I would do while cooking. Or like a burn notice. Yes.
No, it's not up there, but it's worth watching.
Yes, I agree.
I like that we're trying to defend our rating from no one.
Sometimes people will be emailing us. So honestly, this is maybe just preempting that a little bit.
Yeah, y'all have opinions, which is fine. Please send them to us.
Yes, but sometimes the shows are solid.
Show us some grace.
Yeah.
You wanted to know what I track?
Oh, yeah.
I track shows that Me Too doesn't want to watch. I am so good at that.
You are good at that. Wow. And wow, it just is so validating and helpful to hear you say that, to hear you admit it. I think this is the first step of our healing. This is how we move forward.
You said we're moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay. We've resolved it.
But you're going to continue choosing scary shows, musicals.
Yeah, nothing's going to change, but we have moved forward and resolved your conflict.
Our conflict.
Right.
All right. Where can people find more conflict-full and conflict-free episodes of the Pilot Podcast?
All you have to do is head to our website, thepilotpodcast.com, or you can follow us on all of your favorite podcast platforms.
You can also follow us on social media at The Pilot Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and X. And you can send thoughts, feelings, show recommendations, because every other week we do a show recommended by you, our wonderful listeners, to askthepilotpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Bye.